Good morning. 28 years ago, I gave my first lecture in English at a JCCA Biennial in Boston. So it's really a pleasure to be here and to be with you and to be with an institution which serves as my home for so many years. A home away from home. A place where I felt that some of my Israeli Judaism had a foothold here in North America. A place which seemed, or whose Judaism seemed, similar or to have a family resemblance to the type of Judaism that I had learned to take for granted in Jerusalem. It's therefore a pleasure to speak to you about Israel and the North American Jewish community. Something's going wrong. Something's fundamentally flawed in our community. And I'm not talking about those who are becoming disengaged. I'm talking about something flawed amongst those who are engaged. We are a Jewish community founded on the principles of religious pluralism and tolerance. We know how to live with difference. We assimilate difference in our midst. We've changed dramatically over the years, as our people have changed. We're not the same as we used to be. Our community, every time we erect boundaries, seems to cross them and force us to rethink, what does it mean to have a big tent? What does it mean to be a community? How do we make room for people who are so profoundly different in ways that our grandparents or even parents couldn't even have imagined that they would be sitting at the table? But they're here. We are a community which prides itself in accepting difference. But for some reason, when it comes to Israel, we're all acting like a bunch of ultra-Orthodox Jews in Mea Shearim. We own the truth. Only we own the truth. Anybody who doesn't agree with me is a traitor. Anybody who speaks at a conference that I don't want, I'm not going to donate to. I don't want to sit next to you. I can't sit next to you because if I sit next to you, I'm going to give you legitimacy. Does that sound familiar? I want to tell you about something that I started, I remember in the JCC in, 26 years ago. I decided to start a series called, I think it was called something like Guide for the Perplexed, in which I invited, I'm an Orthodox rabbi, I invited a conservative and reform colleague to join me together to talk about big issues facing the Jewish people. Because Jews of different backgrounds just didn't talk with each other. And any time we would try, and I remember we would fight trying to get different types of rabbis, oh no, I can't sit next to this person. Oh, if I'll sit next to them, somehow that will bestow upon them legitimacy. Some bizarre phenomena, as if an individual thinks that they are God-given, I don't know what, that the mere fact that I sit next to you is as if legitimacy is yours to give. Who do you think you are? I'm going to give you, like I wish I was so important. Like I can't wait that, no one even trusts my hechsher, let alone someone's going to trust that I'm giving them legitimacy as a Jew. But it's crazy. Now we're laughing about it, but I remember struggling to find fellow rabbis who would sit together with me, or other rabbis. And it was considered so revolutionary. Jews who disagree, sitting on the same panel, talking about Judaism. What's the world going to come to? Well, the world's come to that. Not amongst them, and not amongst others, but amongst us, in this room, and in the room of every single Jewish institution. We want to fight for religious pluralism in Israel, but we've forgotten to fight about pluralism about Israel. And the question is why? And the question is, how can JCCs play a role in healing the North American Jewish community? Because I think you have a sacred task. It's not by accident. See, the conversation around Israel for the last 60 or so years has been primarily a crisis-centered narrative. It's primarily been a narrative around death. Somebody's dying. And as a result, the relationship with Israel is a solution to that death. Initially, you were dying. You were at risk. In a post-Holocaust world, diaspora life is dangerous. Diaspora life is insecure. You never know when they're going to come get you. And you have to support Israel because Israel is your safety net. Israel is the port of call that you could always go to if you need to get there. And if you got up and said, that's not going to happen again, what was the rejoinder? What was the rejoinder? Oh, I feel safe. You know what the rejoinder always was? So did the Germans. I'm not making it up. You'll see it's right around the corner. And you need to support Israel, because through the support of Israel, you are creating a Jewish army which will stand on the front lines, not Tzva Haganah LeYisrael, not the Israel Defense Forces, but really the Jewish people's defense force. That was one narrative. Over time, a terrible thing happened to you. You weren't hated enough. You started to feel more comfortable. In North America, you found homes in the United States and Canada, wonderful homes, which have accepted Jews in ways that nobody would have imagined. Advocating for the need to support Israel because you're on the verge of destruction didn't sound that authentic. Doesn't play that well. Among some it does, but it's primarily amongst those for whom the Holocaust was a personal experience. As the years pass, America is too good. The United States and Canada are too good to the Jews to tell them that you need somebody to save you. So we created another narrative. It didn't really replace the first, because the first still's there. And most of us still believe, somewhere back then, you never know. It's still there. An insurance policy doesn't hurt. But we created a new one. It was still related to death. But it wasn't you who were dying. It's Israel which is dying. It's Israel which is in danger. Where are Jews at risk today? In New Orleans? In Tenafly? Jews are at risk in Jerusalem, in Beersheba, in Sderot, in Ashdod, in Ashkelon. And one of the lessons of the Holocaust was not just that we have to create a safety net. One of the key lessons of the Holocaust is that when a Jew is in danger, we don't go to sleep. So I won't go to sleep. Israel claims me. Israel claims me. Can't get too excited. This issue does bother me. Israel claims me because I'm responsible. But either way, my relationship with Israel is to prevent somebody from dying. It's pikuach nefesh. The famous principle of Jewish law, which overrides every principle just about, to save a life. Now, the problem with pikuach nefesh, or the problem with the death narrative, is there really isn't much room for pluralism and tolerance. If I believe that my position is saving dying Jews, and you don't agree with me, you don't get it, you're dangerous. And if you're dangerous, it's not about saying these and these are the words of the living God. Okay, you want a mechitza, I don't want a mechitza. You want this type of rabbi, I want this type of rabbi. I want to pray in English, you want to pray in Hebrew. You don't want to go to shul. All these issues, there's lots of things which divide us. But, but life and death, there's no room. We become tenacious defenders of Jewish life and allowed ourselves the myth that either only we care or only we have the solution for Jewish survival. And as a result, we're alienating Jews, we're disconnecting Jews from Israel, and we're disconnecting Jews from each other. One of the most beautiful teachings of our tradition tells of God turning to Moses when the Jewish people were worshiping to the golden calf, and God saying to Moses, go down. Leave Mount Sinai. And the rabbis asked, what did God say when God said to Moses, leave Mount Sinai? What was going on? And God says to Moses, go down, I have given you greatness only for the sake of this people. And now that they have sinned, what need do I have of thee? There is no Torah without the Jewish people. There is no Jewish life without the Jewish people. That which you know and take for granted, and which is one of the core foundations of JCC life, is that our commitment starts with Jewish peoplehood, and then we find ways in which we integrate Torah into this people and elevate. Jewish peoplehood precedes Torah. And when Torah undermines the existence of the Jewish people, God says to Moses, go down. I would say to you similarly about Israel. If your ideology about Israel is destroying the Jewish people, go down. I don't need you. I don't need your love. I don't need your support. You mean well, but it doesn't mean you're any less destructive. We have to find a way to love Israel together. We have to find a way to make sure that Israel unites us, doesn't divide us. How do we do that? And why is it that I am so happy to be here today? Because I believe this can be a sacred mission and a sacred innovation of JCCs across North America. Nobody else is doing it. First, as long as we are stuck within this crisis death narrative of pikuach nefesh around Israel, we're stuck. We won't be able to progress. We won't be able to see each other. When there's a death narrative, a crisis-centered narrative, either one of two things is done. Either I remove you, I put you outside of the fence, and I start having lists of who's right and who's politically right, or who I can accept and who I can't, who's friend and who's foe. Or I start advocacy. Now, I'm not talking about advocacy on Congress or advocacy to the non-Jewish world. I start advocacy in the Jewish world. And what is advocacy in the Jewish world more or less about? It assumes that I know and you're an idiot. I have a truth that if I just got you to hear, if I just opened, somehow if I shook you strong enough, if I could shake you, your stupidity and your deafness out of it, you will finally be what? Like me. There's just one fact that will be the tipping point. That's it. It's just one fact. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody changes their opinions on the basis of facts. We pick the facts that agree with our opinions. And you know it all too well. But do you think you own a fact that's going to all of a sudden transform someone to make them like you? And if they're not like you, we blame them. Oh, that's a great one too. I remember recently people were blaming rabbinic students because somehow they didn't pass somebody's litmus test about what it means to be a lover of Israel. Basically, we were blaming them for being 25-year-olds. What we need to do is we have to hire, and I'm not being an ageist, 70-year-olds to be our rabbinic because they get it. They still remember the role and the significance of the Holocaust. Stop it. Stop it. There's a beautiful term that's one of my favorite terms that I learned in Hebrew when I made Aliyah. In Israel, if you really want to insult someone, if you see somebody doing something inappropriate, you say the following term, Katan alecha. It's small on you. Katan aleinu, ladies and gentlemen. This type of discourse, that's not who we are. If we want to create a new relationship with Israel, we have to recognize while dangers exist, Israel was not simply created in order to avoid death. Israel was created in order to create a new life for the Jewish people. Israel's important not because it prevents you or Israelis from dying, but because it can enrich what it means to live as a Jew. Israel is where we are building a homeland of the Jewish people. A place where our Jewish values get to shape the totality of a society. It's not always easy. Sometimes people's Judaism is the type of things that I wish they would forget about. Sometimes there are certain immigrants that I wished stayed here. That wasn't a joke. I'm sorry, I'm a pluralist, it's not true, welcome, etc. I'm good at lecturing about pluralism. It's difficult to build a Jewish society, but it's one of the greatest gifts and challenges and opportunities of contemporary Jewish life. Yet a small taste of it. And I forget about Mea Shearim for a moment, and forget about where women should sit on a bus just for a moment, and forget about a lot of the issues that are problematic. Do you remember Gilad Shalit? I grew up my whole life learning and teaching, whoever saves one life, it's as if they've saved the whole world, right? It's one of those sayings we put on the wall, and we talk about it. What it really means, I don't really know, but it's one of those Jewish great one-liners that we all like to adopt. And somehow it enters into the pantheon of our one-liners and Jewish principles. Well, you know what it's like when a society says, and by the way, when I say a society, 78% of a society. And this is really quite bizarre because in Israel, you never achieve more than 63% to agree on anything. If you would ask Israelis what day it is today, you won't get more than 63%. Because they'll want to know which political party did you belong to when you said today is Tuesday. I'm not sure. What's in it for me? I might be losing out. Maybe it should be Wednesday. 78% of Israelis whose so-called lives were going to be endangered by 1,027 terrorists who were being released. 78% more Israelis were for returning Gilad Shalit than North American Jews. I would come to North America, and people would be lecturing about Israel's security concerns. And I said, excuse me, has your life been a little more nervous since we left these? It's my life. What is it about when you decide that as a Jew you don't count. You don't count people. If one is infinite, then I don't do the calculation, what will happen? Is his life worth future? I don't think in those terms. No more did I think when fellow soldiers of mine were dying and we were fighting to save them. No one did a calculation to say, excuse me, how many are we saving right now and how are we in danger? As Jews, life is infinite, and infinite applies to 1 and applies to 10 and applies to 20. Now, I was able to be participating in a society which didn't just talk about it, but took a risk for it. That's a Jewish society. A Jewish society is one which says everybody, if they want, has a right to have a child. And I don't just talk about family in general. I fund unlimited in vitro fertilization until you have 2 children and until you're 45, if that's what you want. And the highest percentage of in vitro births in the world is in Israel. And it's funded by the state for Jew and non-Jew alike. That's Jewish values meeting the road. I live in a society in which people don't like it, but they don't complain about taxes. Many people speak about where are Israeli philanthropists. All of Israeli society are philanthropists. We pay 60% plus tax. We take it for granted that if there are those who are less fortunate, it's my responsibility to pay. And I'm not getting into larger economic theory. It's just a gut instinct. It's just a gut sense of responsibility. If I have, I give. We have 2 great Jewish communities today. One in Israel and one in North America. 13.5 million Jews in the world, 6 million in Israel and 6 million here, the United States and Canada. Each one is producing a different type of Judaism. In North America, we have a Judaism and a Jewish people who are a welcomed minority, a loved minority, a respected minority. But because we are loved and respected, the outside world is not our enemy. The outside world aren't the goyim. The outside world aren't the people who we have to shelter ourselves from. The outside world are people who we live our lives with, who we learn from and contribute to. Judaism is at the front line of the modern world because of the North American Jewish experience. And Judaism is the better for it. New ideas and new concepts are entering into our tradition. We believe that the eternality of Torah is precisely defined not by its insulation from the world, but by its ability to integrate new ideas from the world. And the North American Jewish community, with all of its challenges, is at the front lines of asking, how does our tradition with a great past have a great future? In Israel, we are building a society where we are the majority, where we have nobody else to blame, where we have nobody who could say it's their problem. It's our problem. And how do we create a society of greatness? How do we create Jewish culture, Jewish values, Jewish ideas, which could define a Jewish society? 2 Jewish communities doing remarkable things. And the only thing we can think about when we get together is death. Katan aleinu, ladies and gentlemen. There's great life that we're building. Let's talk with each other. Let's learn from each other. Let's create the opportunities for North American Jews to engage in the life force of Israel and to ask, how does this enrich my life? And to ask, how can I enrich the life of Israel? How do I create an Israel that I want to have? How do I love Israel not just for what it is, but for what it can be, and take full responsibility to build it and to shape it? We don't need death. We are a tradition of values and ideas and greatness. And around such a conversation, we can find each other again. We can find new ways of talking to each other. But to do so, we need to remember a few simple rules. And with this, I'll conclude. The first rule of the conversation is that one of the greatest lies is sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm me. It's a lie. Words harm you. We need to stop harmful, hateful talk and words. If somebody disagrees with you, disagree, but disagree with respect. Words such as traitor, enemy, have to be removed from our vocabulary. They have no place in our conversation. Our tradition teaches us that lashon hara, or that to shame somebody, it's like murdering them. Because when you embarrass them and you see them blushing, it's like you've spilt their blood. Words matter. And in JCCs across North America, no place should be given to anyone to come and to speak who is not respectful or willing to be respectful of somebody who disagrees with them. You don't create programs of opposite extremes, so it's like some gladiators coming along so you could see death, you could see blood, and it'll be entertaining. Oh, I have my pit bull and you have your pit bull. Aha, he's going to come or she's going to come and tell them. And you could leave massaged as you heard all that you need to hear to validate that which you already knew. And the other side leaves insulted. Not in the JCCs that I know. Katan aleinu. And this is not philosophy, this is policy that you could implement tomorrow. And you could say to somebody, I don't want to entertain, I want to unite. I don't want to titillate, I want to engage. I want to deepen, I want to thicken. I want to build a relationship with Israel. I don't want to win. Words matter. 2, we have to simply stop talking about big tents and act that way. Take the person who insults you the most. Take the person whose position on Israel is most difficult for you and sit down with them. Invite them together to have a respectful conversation. Guess where? In one of the only places in Jewish life which is committed to the principles of religious pluralism and big tent ideology and to convening a conversation. You wrote it in your beautiful statement. You want to convene a conversation? Well, then you're one of the few people in North America. Convene it. But don't convene it with those who agree with you. Convene it with those who don't. So that more and more Jews could come together and say, yes, I am a lover of Israel. We know, and we've learned it all too well, that whenever somebody dominates the Jewish conversation, most people stay outside. And that's why we open it up. The wider we make the conversation around Israel, Israel wins. I'm not afraid of those who are disengaged. I'm afraid of the engaged who are destroying the future and narrowing who could call themselves a lover of Israel. Finally, I want to ask of all of you something very, very difficult. I want to ask of you something that according to Lurianic Kabbalah, God did. And it's not simple. In Lurianic Kabbalah, they ask, how could the world exist? How is there any space for the world? God is supposed to be everywhere. God takes up all the space. There shouldn't be any room for us. God should have pushed everything outside. According to Lurianic Kabbalah, in the act of creation, God contracts. The term is called tzimtzum. God contracts to let the world exist alongside God. For those of you who love Israel, love it with every core in your being, but contract. Contract to let somebody else love it next to you in a different way. Know that you don't own the truth. Know that you don't monopolize the future love and care for Israel. We have a choice. What type of future are we going to have? The JCC in which I grew up, the JCC which shaped my Jewish life, is a JCC and was a JCC filled with vitality and joy. It was exciting to be Jewish in my JCC. I was proud to be Jewish in my JCC. We can do the same with Israel. But it requires of us a little tzimtzum. It requires of us to remember that it's not about being right. It's about walking together. It's about creating a new chapter in Jewish history. When you go back, there'll be a lot of people who disagree. There'll be a lot of people who will demand that a leader means tell them, fight them. I ask of you, I plead with you, and my bracha to you is that you be a different type of leader. That you be a leader which teaches the Jewish people the term katan aleinu. That you be a leader who embraces something larger. And that you be a leader who brings Israel in a new way into Jewish life. In Israel, which is not only a blessing for Israelis, but in Israel which is a blessing for all of us. In Israel which together can open a new chapter for us, a beautiful chapter in Jewish history. May it be so, amen, and thank you. I have time for some questions. I think there's microphones. Yes, there are 2 microphones. Any questions, please?
I know this is not a shy group. I know you've had coffee. Okay. Oh.
Hi. This isn't so much it relates to the JCCs, but to the broader community maybe. I mean, there is this division out there now, it seems, between sort of the AIPAC world and the J Street world, and I was wondering if you could just comment on that.
I think I just did. But there's, again, as an Israeli, I volunteer for AIPAC and I lectured at J Street. Someone once asked me, why did you go to J Street? I said, because there's Jews there. Because there's Jews there. Because I want to talk to all Jews. I don't give up on anyone. I don't give up on anyone. We are a community. I remember when I was the rabbi, when I was the scholar in residence at JCC, a question came before us. Can an individual who is married to a non-Jew sit on the board of a JCC? Do you remember in the 80s the questions we faced? Non-Jews are now having aliyahs to the Torah in our community. Full-fledged members of the Jewish people. Intermarriage means something completely different than what it used to mean. Used to mean assimilation, today it doesn't. It's something different. Somebody might like it more, somebody might like it less. It's just who we are. It's who we are. We love Israel differently. One of the great secrets in Jewish life, and they don't like to talk about it, is that AIPAC and J Street cooperate on campuses. I don't want to, and I want to make this very clear, I don't want to belittle difference. One of the beauties of our tradition is that we accept difference. I don't make it insignificant. We have serious different approaches as to what Israel needs and what's the best way to help Israel. And it could be that one is better than the other, but the only one who will decide is you. There isn't going to be an official Jewish position on that. We spend so much energy trying to fight or bring these two institutions to fight with each other as if one of them wins, we won. I want to just use a different example just to help you think about it. I remember an Orthodox colleague of mine said, in 30 years there'll be no more Reform Judaism, and he was smiling. I said, I want to, because he was like, we won. Who's we? I don't know, but we won. I said, we won? If you really believe that, you should be ripping Kriya right now. Ripping Kriya right now because you just lost 3 million Jews. 4 million Jews. Once you have a perspective of peoplehood, then you look at the J Streets and you look at the AIPACs, you look at it a different way. Find the institution. I'm not saying that you should belong to the one that you don't like. No, not at all. Go to the one that you believe is most helpful to Israel. But remember, our greatest enemy is not J Street or AIPAC. Our greatest enemy is whom? The vast majority of Jews who aren't showing up. And you're right, our greatest enemy is ourselves. Our greatest enemy are masses and masses of Jews who we don't even get to see. And we think we have the luxury to kick certain people out of the room? And so I thank you for your question, but everything that I was saying was speaking exactly to that. That's the anger, the hostility. Take your greatest challenge and embrace them, and then we'll move in a different direction. Any other questions, please?
Of course, it's easy for me to say because I'm not Israeli, but I think our biggest challenge is what you said, but I think our second biggest challenge is the rabbis in Israel who are trying to keep out everybody.
Yes, one of our great challenges is that there are Jews in Israel who don't accept religious pluralism as a founding principle of the Jewish homeland. One of our great challenges are Jews who don't realize that Israel belongs to all of us. But what should we do about it? Every time a North American Jew disengages from Israel because of them, guess who wins? They do. We don't have the luxury of getting insulted. We are fighting for our survival as a people, not the physical survival, the spiritual survival. In North America, we're fighting assimilation, we're fighting disengagement, we're fighting disinterest, and we're constantly asking, how do we innovate? How do we find somebody or some way to excite someone? We don't give up. Well, I'm asking you, don't give up on Israel. It's similar. I know it's not simple. I know it's not simple to get up and somebody insults you and someone doesn't make a place for you at your home, at the table. You just have to work harder. I could tell you now a simple fact that very often isn't stated because many people in North America feel, I don't have a place. How do I have a voice in the conversation? There is not one single innovative feature of Israeli society in the last 60 years, whether it's in the medical or in the business or in the arts or in education or in religion. There's almost nothing that's happened in the state of Israel which hasn't happened in complete and total partnership with world Jewry. Nothing. You pick, Avram's here, which innovative move have Israelis done alone? We've done it together. When you feel disempowered, I'm here to tell you you're not. Now, I know many Israelis don't necessarily feel that you have a voice. And there are some Israelis who believe that your Judaism is not legitimate. Well, guess what? That's our challenge. I was once lecturing to a group of rabbis, and I was with a sociologist who said, he did an analysis in which he found that on every parameter of Jewish identity, its identity and commitment is lower amongst intermarried families. And he said to the rabbis, I want you now to go back to your communities and to declare intermarriage as the greatest cancer facing the Jewish people. I got up and I looked at him and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe your statistics are right, but guess what? That's the people we were given. That's the challenge of our generation. And every single generation in Jewish history would have loved to have our challenge. There's no ovens. Your problem is what? How to excite unaffiliated to want to make Shabbos alive in their home? How to get people to join a JCC and to send their kids to an early child? This is your challenge? No, nobody's killing you? I said, this is who we are. Well, you know who else we are? We are a people, some of whom have a different approach about Israel than you do. Some of them are intolerant. Some of them are less committed to democracy. I spend every single moment of my life trying to change them. So should you. And when you do, you know what's going to happen? When you look at Israel, you're not going to see them. Any of you know what the percentage of ultra-Orthodox are in Israeli society today? Any of you have an idea? 20. You're like the Chinese who believe that there's 300 million Jews. 8%. Whoa. I know it's growing. I know it's growing, but it's 8%. It's not over. When you see Israel, one of the challenges of creating an engaging Israel conversation around values and ideas is that you don't spend your time seeing that which alienates you. You're too busy building an Israel that you could relate to. The story's not over. We spent 64 years building a country which is strong, which has a vibrant economy, which has a powerful army, a place where any Jew who needs to come could come. That's a great achievement. It's going to take us 60, 70, 100 years to build a different Israel. Those who disagree with you feel that time is on their side. You should believe that time is on your side. And if we're innovative, and if we are exciting, and if we present a different vision about Israel, and if we do it together, we could win. That's who we have. I remember when, and with this I'll conclude, I remember many, many years ago, when my tank was blown up in Lebanon. You train on a tank, and you train with certain soldiers who you're used to fighting with. They're like, you sort of know each other. You trained for years, and then you go to war with them, and it's like it's like you could say, I was the commander, you could say certain words, and you know that they'll listen, and you can speak to the driver, and you know how he's going to drive. You have it it's quite comforting. And in an uncomfortable reality, being with the people that you know sort of gets you through the day. After my tank was blown up, I had to go onto a different tank with a bunch of people who I didn't know. They didn't know me. They didn't know my nuances. One of them was suffering from battle fatigue. It wasn't as comforting an experience. But no one asked me. No one asked me. Part of Israel and part of being a Jew is no one asks you who you're going to battle with. No, you don't get the luxury to pick the ideal condition. What I love in Israel, which takes for granted that conservative reform, reconstructionist renewal, post-denominational Judaism are vibrant expressions of Judaism, of course I would. Would I love a Judaism where every rabbi could perform conversions and marriages? Of course I would. I'd love such an Israel. We weren't given that Israel yet. The key term is yet. Whether we'll have a different future is in your hands. Let's build that future together. Thank you all very, very much.